Hey there, welcome back to week 4. We are getting to the 2/3 mark of the class once we're done with this week. That's crazy. Before we get started, I don't know if you heard about the witch and the warlock. They gave birth to identical triplet daughters, but that caused a problem. Yeah, they couldn't tell which witch was which. So there's that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed last week. I think the discussion of market failure and government failure is an incredibly important one. A lot of times in the news and the politicians these days, there's a false dichotomy between either markets are always right or government is always right, and that's false. There are definitely shades of gray, nuances, situations where markets work and where markets fail, and where government works and where government fails. So I hope you found it interesting to think about things like the public goods problem, externalities, positive and negative, monopoly power, which we're going to talk more about, as I said, in the coming weeks, especially starting next week. Um, and then also about those hugely important social topics of poverty and inequality. Um, Markets often work well, but they often fail. And the question comes down to what do you want your world to look like, right? And so, are these other issues, right, of underproduction of the good stuff and overproduction of the bad stuff without government intervention, is that okay with you or not, right? And so that's the question that you have to ask. I have to ask. Economics cannot answer by itself, but we must, right? So, what's going to happen this week? Well, last week on the theory of the consumer, which was the second part of the material, we looked behind the demand curve, right, and said why do we model, or how do we, not why, but how do we model consumer choices with constrained budgets and the rest. And so, we looked at the Vulcan rational choice thing and then talked about behavioral economics, which I think many of you probably found pretty interesting and probably would have wanted to do more of if you had time. Maybe you can. Go read some more books out there. There's good stuff out there for sure, that's very interesting indeed. But what we're going to do starting this week and through next week as well, and part of week 6 actually, is go behind the supply curve. So we're going to change our hat, and now we're going to be the boss, and we're going to think about how businesses, individual businesses, under different conditions, um, choose questions about how much output to produce, what price to charge for their product, so they can maximize their profitability. And if they face losses, how do they go about deciding what to do with that? And we're going to think about that from an economic perspective as opposed to an accounting perspective, since this is economics class. And I think you'll find that interesting as we go forward. So we're going to talk about productivity first. And productivity is just saying, look, you take your inputs, land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. And the question is, how much output do you get from them? How productive are they? And the economic question is, how does productivity behave? If you bring in more inputs, is it always increasing? Or does it increase for a while and then start to decrease? And why? And so we're going to model that behavior. And the question is, why do we care about that? Well, we care about that because productivity is what drives the costs of running your business. They're inversely related to each other, right? When productivity is rising on the margin, costs are falling on the margin. And likewise, when productivity declines on the margin, then costs start to decline on the margin. And so we need to put that understanding of productivity and how it drives costs, and then think a lot about costs. You'll notice that this week there's going to be a lot of little formulas. They're not complicated formulas, but there are a number of them. There are acronyms, I can't talk, like AVC, or abbreviations like AVC for average variable cost, and MC for marginal cost, and a bunch of others. And you just need to practice with them. Make them your own. There's a handy dandy formula sheet that you should have printed off, and if you haven't, please do that. But that'll help you to keep those all straight and what they mean, right? And those kinds of things. There's also a bunch of little graphs, short run, long run, averages and marginals and all the rest, and you just need to practice that. We're going to use these materials from this week especially throughout the rest of the course. So important stuff for you to, almost the rest of the course. So important stuff for you to get mastery over. And then the second part of the material applies that to profit maximization. So profits are revenues minus costs. So we talked about the cost stuff in the first part of this week. But then profits are revenues minus costs. So we need to bring the revenue picture in. And all you're going to talk about this time is a business operating in one specific, what we call market structure. and that's competition, excuse me, that's so intense that we call it perfect. So perfect competition. There are almost no real world markets that are perfectly competitive. And yet, thinking about this and going through the characteristics and the behavior gives us sort of a benchmark to which we could compare all the other real world types of businesses. So we're going to introduce you to a character named Bob. Bob's a wheat farmer. Bob's a good guy. Bob grows wheat. But he's like many, 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 many other firms who also grow the exact same wheat. And so he's a drop in the bucket in his market. It's such a competitive market. He and all of the other individual farmers, wheat farmers, have zero control. You knew I'd do that. Zero control over the price they can charge, right? And so we're going to ask, well, how do they go about then, if they don't control the revenue side, how do they go about maximizing profits? You're going to need to train your brain again, right? Like we did with the supply and demand curve shifting stuff. And you're going to need to train your brain to always ask 3, sometimes 4 questions about profit maximizing behavior. So you'll learn that this week. Make sure you practice that. Make sure you ask those questions. It will help make this a lot easier for you as you go through this material. So, real quick, you know what Master Yoda said when he saw himself for the first time on 4K television? HDMI. That's my Yoda impression. I got one more Yoda joke. Do you know Yoda's last name? Yoda Lehi-hoo. So Lehi-hoo is his last name. Whoa. All right. As my grandson Jack would say, oh, wow, Grandpa. So we'll just leave it at that. In terms of assignments this week, there's 2 assignments that are due by the end of the day on Thursday, right? So there is productivity and cost homework exercise, which is asking you to apply those concepts. And then there's problem set number 2. Both of those are hard deadlines because I will make the answer key available right away on Friday morning. So that I can give you that and get you feedback and get your stuff graded so you're ready for the exam or celebration of knowledge number 2 that will occur and be open on Saturday, Sunday, and all day on Monday. Don't forget about the weekly quiz. There's always a weekly quiz. That doesn't close until the end of the night on Sunday. And so make sure you take that as well. And then there is the celebration of knowledge number 2, right? Like I said, open all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and all day Monday to accommodate your summer plans and needs and all of that. It's again 40 multiple choice questions covering everything in weeks 3 and 4. So the stuff about market failure, government failure, theory of the consumer, productivity and costs, and then perfectly competitive behavior. You know, in terms of preparing, there's always those supplemental videos, there's those practice multiple choice questions, there's the Quizlets, and of course there's the old sample exams, 3 of them up on Blackboard. Not Blackboard, I keep on saying Blackboard, Brightspace. I am getting old. On Brightspace, right? So take a look at those as part of your preparation, but the notes and my videos are, waving my finger. That's terrible. That's rude. But those are the most important things because that's where the content is. So you need to know the definitions. You need to be able to apply these in a number of different circumstances to think about economic decision making with the types of problems we've covered these past 2 weeks. I got one last joke for you. Well, that's not exactly a joke, but my wife and I are pretty excited. Actually, this afternoon we're going to go and get our new glasses. After that, we'll see. Okay. So if you have questions as you're preparing, studying, doing your assignments this week, you know how to get a hold of the old guy, right? Give me a call, shoot me an email, set up an appointment, and I'm happy to help you out. Good luck in your studying. Good luck in your homework. Have a great week. Take care, guys. Everybody. Bye.